Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Omar Khalid. But today is the 13th of April 2023, and these are the stories that we will be discussing in detail during the course of our show. We'll begin with the restoring of diplomatic ties between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Islamic Republic of Iran, which was due to the efforts of the People's Republic of China. And now, as an aftermath of all of that, Saudi Arabia hosted landmark delegations from Iran as well as from Syria on Wednesday. Gulf countries are also preparing to re-establish diplomatic ties after years of division that caused a lot of bitterness in the Muslim world and amongst different factions as well. Now, hours after the Iranian side said a delegation had touched down in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Saudi Arabia also says that it is going to send a delegation to Iran to further talk about ties, to further restore the diplomatic ties. Good developments, a lot of positive developments that are happening, and this is going to be our first segment. Our second story of the day, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the IMF deal with Pakistan. Of course, the ninth review of the extended fund facility of the IMF is complete. All the preconditions at least are complete. This has been said by Ishaq Dasa very recently. Also, the IMF Middle East and Central Asia Director Jihad Azur has also expressed his confidence that the staff level agreement between Pakistan and the IMF will be signed soon after the board's approval. So, of course, quite positive developments from both the sides, from the IMF side and from Pakistan's side as well. And finally, we are going to talk about the NHS hospitals in the United Kingdom that could take up to 6 weeks to return to normal after junior doctors had begun their 96-hour strike. This has been said by a senior medic. They are asking for increase in wages because they work too much as per their demands and they are not compensated equally. Now, as a result of that, the whole medical system in the United Kingdom has been affected, and as per different experts, it is said that this effect is going to last for quite some time. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns the restoration of ties between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Islamic Republic of Iran, thanks to the initiation of efforts by People's Republic of China. And now that that has happened, we are seeing more and more efforts in that right direction. More in the following report.
Middle East is witnessing flurry of diplomatic activity which follows last month's landmark Chinese-brokered rapprochement that Iran and Saudi Arabia, who have backed opposing sides in conflicts around the Middle East, would work towards resuming ties. Saudi Arabia and Syria have pledged to seek a political solution to the crisis besetting the latter, according to a joint statement released after a meeting between the two countries' foreign ministers in Jeddah. Two sides also agreed on the importance of resolving Syria's humanitarian challenges and creating a suitable environment for aid to reach all regions of the country. An Iranian delegation also arrived in Saudi Arabia to pave the way for reopening diplomatic missions as the Gulf rivals prepare to normalize relations. Iran's President Ibrahim Raisi has been invited to Saudi Arabia, according to Tehran, in what would be the first visit of its kind since Mohammad Khatami went in 1999. As the context grows, Saudi Arabia is also negotiating with Yemen's Iran-backed Houthi rebels. Resumption of diplomatic ties between Saudi Arabia and Iran is a significant development that marks a potential turning point towards promoting peace and stability in Middle East and resolution of regional conflicts.
Dr. Qandil Abbas, expert in international relations, joins us online. Dr. Qandil, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Qandil, what a positive development due to the efforts of the People's Republic of China. On the 6th of March 2023, we saw a restoration, a beginning of a restoration of ties between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Islamic Republic of Iran. Do you feel this landmark agreement, this restoration of ties, has the potential to change the whole scenario as far as the Middle East is concerned?
Thank you very much. Yes, Iran and Saudi Arabia are two important and most important states of Middle East, and any positive or negative change in the relationship between Riyadh and Tehran will have a direct influence on the Middle Eastern regional order. So we know that most of the Middle Eastern conflicts are directly or indirectly are concerned with Iran and Saudi Arabia, as well as, for example, Yemen is concerned, or Syria is concerned, or Iraq is concerned. In all these conflicts, Iran and Saudi Arabia are having direct or indirect influence. So today, when we are observing deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran, so that deal, if that will become mature, that will have a direct positive impact on regional order in the Middle East, and that will help conflicts in the Middle East to resolve them.
Dr. Qandil, also I'd like to understand that at the same time that the Iranians were in Saudi Arabia, the Syrians were also in Saudi Arabia. Both the delegations had been invited by the King of Saudi Arabia. As per different diplomats in the region, this was something that was inconceivable in the past, and now this is a reality that the Middle East is observing with a lot of interest. How do you feel both the countries, King of Saudi Arabia and Iran, work together to also solve Syria's humanitarian crisis?
Okay, once again, Syria and a conflict in other areas of Middle East are concerned with the role of Iran and Saudi Arabia. And as we know, that Iran is supporting the government of Bashar, and because of Iranian support, we know that Bashar Assad survived in the crisis of Syria. But on the other hand, Saudi Arabia was supporting rebels in Syria, and later on, Syria international alliance against Syria. So that could matter. We know that Saudi Arabia are face to face in uh, the crisis of Syria, and Syria is facing humanitarian crisis because of almost, last decade crisis. I believe that if Iran and Saudi Arabia resolve their mutual conflicts, that will very positive impact on resolution of economic, social, and political crisis in Syria. And definitely, we know that the process is started, and the restoration of democracy in Syria will have very positive impact on the whole regional order as well.
Abbas, it's not just meetings between Iran and Saudi Arabia, not just the meetings between Saudi Arabia and Syria, but also meetings between other countries on the parallel that are happening, like Oman and Bahrain that have Qatar and Bahrain that have recently met at the headquarters of the Gulf Cooperation Council General Secretariat in Riyadh, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia as well. Do you feel this rapprochement between the King of Saudi Arabia and the Islamic Republic of Iran is also leading to also detente between other countries in the Middle East that had issues between each other? Do you feel this is leading to a harmonious foreign policy between all the countries in the Middle East?
In fact, the crisis started in Middle East and particularly in Persian Gulf region since 2011, when the wave of Arab Spring started. Almost all the countries were under influence of that wave of instability. And after that, we know that the role of Saudi Arabia and Iran was mostly destructive in these issues because these mutual conflicts were manipulated by Iran or Saudi Arabia. So now when we are observing that on the one hand, Israel is trying to normalize its relation with Arab countries through Abraham Accord, and they are trying to establish their diplomatic relations. But during last 2 to 3 years, Arab countries observed that despite the fact that they are showing positive impression towards Israel, but still they are under threats, and they are facing a lot of economic and social crisis. So I believe that most of Middle Eastern and Persian Gulf rulers are reaching to the conclusion that till the time they are not resolving their mutual conflicts within the region, they will not be able to resolve their domestic conflicts, and they cannot improve their economic and social conditions. And especially when the Saudi king started the vision of 2030, that is a flagship project in this region that will have very positive influence. So we know that if this problem is prevailing in this region between different countries and their mutual conflict are remaining unresolved, this region cannot improve its economic and political stability.
You were talking about the Houthi rebels. Now, we know that the Saudi and Omani delegations are also holding talks with the Houthi officials in Sana'a. Do you feel some kind of breakthrough will happen, like the breakthrough that happened between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Iran?
When Saudi Arabia attacked Yemen, they were expecting that they will be able to resolve the issue of Yemen within 2 to 3 weeks only. And they were relying on the support of United States and other European countries. And we know that several years of conflict between Saudi Arabia and Yemen resulted to more and more crises in the region. And on the one hand, Houthis are having alignment with Iran, and Saudi Arabia is targeting Houthis in Yemen. So that is one of the major issue between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So when Iran and Saudi Arabia started normalization between each other, that will have direct impact on Yemen as well, because in Yemen, the suggestion of Houthi rebel is that we need to follow liberal democracy. And if we conduct general elections in Yemen, whoever having majority vote, he will lead the Yemen. So that is very logical and practical solution. So I believe that if Saudi Arabia is pulling back its forces from Yemen and we are letting Yemenis to decide their issue on domestic level, and Iran and Saudi are supporting and as a facilitator to Yemenis, that will have very positive impact on peace in Yemen.
You know, we've discussed a little bit about how the Middle East and the Middle Eastern countries are looking at the thaw in the friction between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Islamic Republic of Iran. But how is the West seeing it as well? I understand that the US had a very cautious response to the improvement of relations between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Also, Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, has spoken with the US National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, in a telephonic conversation. How do you feel the West or the United States of America is now looking at this renewal of ties in the Middle East?
I believe Chinese brokered a deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia appeared as surprise for Western countries, and particularly United States, because they were feeling that Persian Gulf and Middle East as a whole is area of influence of United States, and China or Russia cannot interfere in this region. But gradually, China successfully penetrated economically in this region, and they established their very good economic relations with the different countries of Persian Gulf and Middle East. And particularly, Chinese are very much focused on Saudi Arabia and Iran, and they know that they have a huge investment in Saudi Arabia as well as Iran. For example, in Iran, they are offering more than $400 billion projects. So they don't want to, they wanted to protect their economic investment in this region. So till the time Saudi Arabia and Iran are in conflict, they are not feeling that their investment in this region is secured. So now they appear to bring Saudi Arabia and Iran closer to each other. They have their own objectives for protection of their own investment, but that is very much surprising for United States. And I think on the whole, if they are taking it as a positive, that will be very important for United States and European countries as well, because peace in the Middle East and Persian Gulf region will have opportunities for United States and European countries as well. However, they don't want to see increasing influence of China in this region.
Herein lies a dichotomy, Dr. Qandil. The fact remains that on the one hand, it is because of China's diplomatic efforts that countries that nobody thought would be talking again or restoring ties is happening. Whether it is due to the economic implications of peace in the Middle East that China brokered the deal, whether it be due to diplomatic issues, but the fact remains that it is a diplomatic trump card for the People's Republic of China. Do you feel this is further going to cause friction between the US and China? And B, do you feel that it is going to affect the relations between the US and, for example, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to some extent, because this, thaw in relations has been brokered by a country that the US finds to be against its basic ideology?
I think we can take it as a country. China and United States on international level that going on, and particularly China penetrating the areas of influence European countries. So as of that competition, but particularly in the Middle East, I believe that the regional order will become uh, very much different in future days, because now America will lose its influence in the Middle East, and losing the petrodollar is very much important for American global hegemony. So America is pushing word towards multipolarity, but on the other hand, Russia and China are trying to establish multipolarity in the international system. So now uh, evidences are supporting the idea of multipolarity on international level as well as on regional level. So the appearance of China in the Middle East new phase is very much threatening for American and European influence in this region, and that will have certain consequences for it.
All right, so we might see a lot of important chess moves, quote unquote, as far as the West is concerned, following this improvement of relations due to China's brokering of and, of course, restoration of ties between Iran and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. How is it going to affect Pakistan, Dr. Saab?
Very important question, because Pakistan is having very good relations with both Iran and Saudi Arabia, and usually in our foreign policy, both countries as brothers, and they are always having very good relations with Pakistan. During a 75-year political history of Pakistan, that with rather Iran or Saudi Arabia. So, but Pakistan remained very much worried about conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia, because their conflict is having direct impact on Pakistan. On the one hand, sectarianism is in Pakistan is also offshoot of their rivalry, and on the other hand, Pakistan want to be benefited by energy resources of Iran, and we have already signed gas pipeline project with Iran, and Iran has completed its own part of this project, and still from Pakistani side we are failed to complete our own part. So if this problem is resolved between Iran and Saudi Arabia, on the one hand we will be able to benefit from potential energy resources and other trade opportunities of Iran, and as well as we will be able to be benefited from Saudi Arabia and other Arabian countries.
Of course, and improvement relations also means strength as far as the Muslim Ummah is concerned and the Muslim world is concerned, and that is the need of the day when we look at Islamophobia and so many other issues that plague the Muslim world. Thank you so very much, Dr. Qandil Abbas, to have joined us. International relations expert Dr. Qandil Abbas talking to us about the restoration of ties between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the Islamic Republic of Iran, as well as talks between Syria and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Only positive things that are coming out. Let's hope they overcome all the issues that exist between them and strengthen the Middle East, and in fact indirectly also strengthen the Muslim world. Let's come to our second segment, and that concerns the ninth tranche of the extended fund facility of the IMF that was supposed to be given to Pakistan some time back, but of course there were some demands, certain requirements that the IMF had asked for from Pakistan, and those requirements have been met with. As far as Ishaq Dar Saab, our Minister for Finance, is concerned, he has said this in a statement. Also, the International Monetary Fund Middle East and Central Asia Director Jihad Azur has also expressed his confidence that this staff level agreement between the IMF and Pakistan will soon be signed once the board approves it. So positive developments on that side. To talk about that, the relationship between the IMF and Pakistan, and more on Pakistan's economy, we've been joined by Ali Salman. He's a leading economist. Ali, thank you very much to have joined us. Ali, when you look at IMF and Pakistan and this ninth tranche, this tranche that really took a lot of time as far as Pakistan is concerned, or the IMF preconditionalities is concerned, or other issues that maybe the IMF had vis-a-vis Pakistan. When you look at the current meeting that is happening in Washington between the IMF and Pakistan, how do you see the outcome of it now that Jihad Azur Saab has himself said that this deal is going to be finalized, the staff level agreement is going to be signed once the board approves it? Is this finally going to happen?
Well, I think the relationship between Pakistan and IMF in last 1.5 years, I must say, has been on a trajectory of mutual mistrust, unfortunately. It started when the former finance minister in a PTI regime, Mr. Shaukat Tareen, did not follow the program commitment with the IMF. And then when the new government came in, it was expected that Mr. Miftah Ismail and later on Mr. Ishaq Dar would take the charge and continue with the program commitments. But I think the new government also took some time, and that that created a further level of mistrust. If you recall the steps such as the restrictions on import, or at least at some point in time, the intervention in the forex exchange market, which was later on lifted. Import restrictions are also being lifted, and then recently the steps like subsidy, the provision of free distribution of atta. These are the measures which probably government felt almost obligated to take care of the masses when they were stricken by a very high level of inflation. But when it comes to IMF program, unfortunately, they remain, they remain pretty stringent on their conditionalities in terms of, subsidies, in terms of welfare, these welfare policies, and we don't have much room. There are also expectations on behalf of IMF to increase tax revenue or non-tax revenue. Government took some measures, for instance, increasing of excise duty on tobacco was one such measure. But we are seeing that the effects of these measures are not forthcoming because the overall economic climate is not enhancing confidence in the investors, in the private sector. We see the recent survey which came out from the Overseas Chamber, from Pakistan Business Council. These are all suggestive of a lack of trust. So I think these are the difficult environment in which both parties feel very difficult to comply with in terms of the expectations and conditionalities.
This mistrust between the IMF and Pakistan, is it also related somehow directly or indirectly to the political situation in Pakistan?
So political situation has added definitely complexity, and that has not only created problem within the Pakistan, but also given a signal, especially at a time when we are expecting, according to our schedule, general elections later this year. So from the IMF standpoint, they would need assurances that any new government which would come in at the time of elections would continue the program. But the current situation doesn't give them confidence. So I think that has added further complexity. And then if you look at how, for instance, the courts have intervened in last few weeks very aggressively in the matters of, I would say, parliament and executive, this is all added to chaos, and nothing is sure at this point in time. Well, the only thing which we are sure is unfortunately more chaos. So I think this has definitely created more trouble for signing the agreement, the staff level agreement. And then, as you mentioned, the international commitment from friendly countries, which we were expecting earlier to come through, much earlier than this time of the year. They haven't come through. And although we have received positive assurances, and according to the news, IMF also has received positive commitment from UAE recently. But unless we see that happening, unless we see in black and white, unless we see with clarity that this has taken place, we cannot say for certainty that it will happen, and that has, I think, added on the uncertainty in the whole discussion.
Ali, don't you feel that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the UAE giving assurances to the IMF that they are going to, support Pakistan, isn't this enough for the IMF? What are the prerequisites do you feel the IMF wants in order to secure the this tranche of the extended fund facility?
So it's very strange. I mean, earlier in the previous programs or discussions, I think this level of compliance from IMF in terms of friendly countries was not mentioned, was not required. And at a point where these assurances were provided, including China, which not only provided verbal assurance, but also it provided re-rolling of its debt, you remember, a few weeks back. So that has been in place. But then the latest requirement from IMF was that they need something in writing, as a form of a letter. So that was something new, and I think the Pakistani government was not prepared for it. And I'm hopeful that it will come through, and I'm hopeful that the friendly countries which have made assurances will follow. But I'm sure, look, they will also have their expectations. Now, Pakistan is in a difficult situation. The geographic, the geostrategic, situation around our region is changing very dramatically. So look at Saudi Arabia, Iran. We were earlier talking. I was listening to your program, and then the Ukraine war. So role of Pakistan in this emerging dynamics in the region has not really been defined clearly. I think and that is also, earlier Pakistan used to have this advantage in terms of the playing an important role in the regional stability. And now other players have come in. China has brokered the peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So that's a totally a new dynamic in play. So I think that is, in my modest opinion, unfortunately, has reduced Pakistan's importance. It used to have in terms of geopolitics. That's why we need to really fix our own house in order, rather than just looking outside, looking at IMF, looking at World Bank, looking at, that we have continuously done in the past.
The fact remains, that, Ali, is that we need the IMF at this juncture in our history in order to stabilize ourselves. Once we are stable, then of course we can look at alternate options as well. But at this moment, IMF seems to remain a very important part of Pakistan's stability. Now, Jihad Zahoor, I said it in the beginning of this segment, who is the IMF Middle East and Central Asia Director, has also said that he's quite positive that this staff level agreement is going to be signed between the IMF and Pakistan once the board approves it. I mean, if the IMF did not want to go ahead with it, or wanted, a certain lull as far as the proceedings is concerned, it would have given a different statement. But this statement kind of tilts towards or points towards the fact that an agreement is very near. Do you agree?
I agree, and I'm hopeful that the agreement is near. I mean, I do not have doubt in that. But I think this is also, raises a question mark on the credibility of the IMF itself. A country which is in the program must not default, right? So that's the whole purpose of IMF assistance being sought, that we must not default. As a member of IMF, Pakistan has the right to seek that assistance in terms of the external account balance. And that is also not just a credibility question for government of Pakistan, it's also a question for IMF. So I think it is in the interest of both parties to actually make this deal through, make it happen. And I hope that both in terms of the commitments from government and also the commitments of the IMF would come through sooner or later, so that we can see more stability than we are witnessing today.
Ali, do you feel IMF will play an important role in steering Pakistan out of this balance of payment crisis?
Well, you see, IMF role is limited. IMF role is limited to the extent of providing that that financial support. So at that point in time, the IMF role ends. From that point, from their point onward, a role of the government of Pakistan, role of the institutions of the Pakistani government, Ministry of Finance in particular, comes in. So it is not IMF job to actually see economic reforms is happening. It is not the job of IMF to ensure that tax reforms are happening, for instance, or privatization is happening. They can just bring it as conditionalities. They have done it in the past, but it hasn't happened. They can do it again. They will do it again. But then not doing it is not their problem, it's our problem. So unless we start seeing these issues as our problem, I do not see how are we going to move from a temporary stability of the economy to growth and ultimately transformation.
What kind of moves need to be taken by Pakistan on the structural and on different other aspects of Pakistan's economy or management in order to steer it out of this current crisis? B, I'd also like to point out towards the growth outlook that the IMF has projected for Pakistan, and that has been lowered to 0.5%, hinting on inflation, 27% of inflation, that is what it talks about, and an unemployment rate increasing to 7%. The Asian Development Bank and the World Bank have also given similar projections. What needs to be done by Pakistan in order to stabilize itself? I mean, putting IMF aside.
Putting IMF aside, I think what is most important in my view is also very soon we are going to hit the budget cycle. So I think we should keep that in mind, and I would say that tax reforms, starting from the sales tax, income tax, these reforms, and we have an obsession of always collecting more revenue by increasing the tax rate. But we have been saying, Prime Institute has been saying that we should change this thinking. We should talk about decreasing the tax rate and broadening the tax base. And when we talk about structural reforms, the most important thing is getting away all the exemptions which we give to different sectors of the economy. Everyone should pay tax according to the profit or income or salary level without any discrimination, which is not currently the case. So I think the most important reform, if you ask me, is this reform. Secondly, public spending. Public spending, whether it is talking about the federal government spending after 18th Amendment, we should have not only devolved administratively, which we did, but we should also have devolved in terms of financial sense. We continue to hold some functions, federal government continue to hold some functions, so that must be given up. And also the state-owned enterprises, if they continue to hemorrhage our economy in terms of billions and hundreds of billions of rupees, I think these are very clear-cut options which Pakistani government needs to take. Once you do it, on one point, you will be able to reduce the fiscal deficit, which is again going to touch, the latest numbers is 6.8%, which is quite high. We need to bring them down less than 4%. And so once that is happening, the fiscal account can be plugged to some extent. But more importantly, when you change the tax in the system, when you change the tax environment, you are encouraging people in firms, both inside Pakistan and outside Pakistan, to stay in the business, to invest more, create more jobs, become more productive, and not only just one time, assure that those tax reforms stay in place for next 5 to 10 years, so that a business, whenever you start a business, you don't run a business, or business plan is never for 1 year or 2 years. It's always for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. But if you change tax policy every year, then no serious business would look at Pakistan in the long-term scenario. I think these are the changes which we need, and these are in our control. It is in the control of the political parties which form the government, be there any political party. And I hope that they can evolve a basic understanding, a basic agreement on 2 or 3 areas of reform, such as public spending, tax rate cuts, making sure that they agree, and then the stability of the policy is provided, so that people can do business, make profit, and then create jobs.
You talk of creation of jobs. I mean, allow me to emphasize that the previous government that we had in Pakistan had promised millions and millions of new jobs, but that never happened. People want jobs, people want stability in their lives, people want to earn enough so that they can, manage their households and their families as well. The reforms that you talk about, whether they be structural or monetary or other kinds of reforms, is this a difficult task ahead for Pakistan, looking at the political scenario that Pakistan is currently facing?
It is, of course. I mean, reforms are never easy. There's always a political cost, which any government has to pay. First of all, let me just make a small correction. If you look at the recent government policy of import restrictions, it was done to bring in current account deficit. It was successful. Our current account was indeed reduced, but at a very heavy cost of business closure and loss of jobs. So a reform would mean that you don't bring these arbitrary changes in our import and export policy. Let the business run. And then business, which is private sector, creates 95% of jobs in Pakistan are created by private sector. Only 5% of jobs are created by the government of Pakistan. So it means that you have to really make the private sector work for jobs creation. And Pakistan is a young country in terms of the age profile, and you need to create every year 1 to 2 million meaningful jobs, and that's not going to happen through government programs, through development spending. That is only going to happen through private sector, through IT. Pakistan has a lot of potential in IT, which we should really capitalize upon, and then we can hopefully then look forward to a better future for our next generations.
All right, thank you very much, Ali Salman, to have joined us, to have talked to us about IMF-Pakistan relations and the recent assurances that have been given not only by Ishaq Dasa but the IMF Middle East and Central Asia Director as well, as far as this 9th tranche of the extended fund facility of the IMF being finally given to Pakistan in the coming days. Let's see what happens. We are all eyes and all ears, and we'll be of course updating you as and when more updates come as far as this important story is concerned. Let's end with the strike of doctors that is happening all across England as we speak. Junior doctors are on strike. They want different things. They want an increase in pay. They want better facilities. But that is creating a whole issue as far as the whole medical system under the NHS is concerned in the United Kingdom. Now, as far as different statistics by organizations say, they say the NHS hospitals could take up to 6 weeks to return to normal after these junior doctors began their 96-hour strike. This is over a pay dispute with the government of the United Kingdom. This strike might end on Saturday, but the impact, the consequences of this strike of the junior doctors of the NHS is going to be far and wide. And as per different experts and different heads of medical organizations in the United Kingdom, unless and until some kind of a deal is reached between the government and the doctors, this could create a lot of lacunae as far as giving proper treatment to the people in the United Kingdom is concerned, because of course a lot hinges on the junior doctors in the United Kingdom of as far as the whole medical field is concerned. Let's hope that some kind of positivity emanates out of the meetings between the government that has assured that this will be taken care of, and the junior doctors that will return, because a lot of uncertainty because of the pays also leads a lot of junior doctors to leave the country and to work in other countries, for example New Zealand and others, where they say that the pay scale is much better than offered in the United Kingdom. We'll be updating you on that story as well as and when we get those. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new story segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Allah Hafiz.